we forget that we're people first, not professionals. And many times it's an exchange of service versus a relationship. Our patients are not just our patients, but their family, their friends. We
Yep.
nurtured our relationships. I think many times people see leadership as an opportunity to shine. Whereas, I see leadership just as an opportunity to have everybody else's back. A leader should push everybody else up. It's not your pedestal to get onto. Not just providing the medical or the dental, but it's really trying to marry our profession. Yes, we come to feed the soul or the body or the tend to the wounds, but really our goal is to not only teach them how to brush and floss, but also teach them how to have a spiritual hygiene, not just oral hygiene. And so you're giving people this hope. They're seeing that, you're using anesthetic, you're taking a tooth out without any pain. We're not just doing free work because it's mid-grade work. We're doing free work that's top quality work. I'll tell you, some people have not come back or they remembered it for years after. I can't believe you made us clean
Yeah.
bathrooms. You made the doctors clean bathrooms. But
I,
that's what serving is. It's leading by example, and it's not being afraid to
yep.
do the lowest job because you're serving others.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Make Your Life Count, a podcast produced by Charity Cup, hosted by Daniel Bora, myself. And each podcast, we try to bring in people that are investing in things that last forever, God and people. That's how we believe as Charity Cup, you can make your life count the most. So every story that we bring you is a story about that, meant to inspire people, to encourage people to live out their life like that by making their life count, by investing in God and people. Today is no different. We have kind of a unique story, different than what we've had in the past. The gentleman is a friend of mine, is a friend of Charity Cup from the very beginning. So he's definitely not a stranger to Charity Cup and to ministry, but he also wears this other hat that on the professional side of things. And I think that's what makes the story even more unique. He's not only a missionary, if you would, he's not only investing in God and people throughout his life, but he's also has a professional career that he's using for God's glory. And I think that makes it very unique. He's a businessman as well as sort of has this profession that you'll hear about. And so without any further ado, please help me welcome to the podcast my good friend, Daniel Ardelean. Hi,
Glad to be.
Daniel. Good to have you. Like I said, you're no stranger around Charity Cup, so in a way, this is like an interview with a friend. So, but
Yeah.
but to the audience, maybe a lot of people don't know. So I'd like to obviously tell them your story. So Dan, maybe if you can kind of give us a synopsis of maybe where you at now, kind of what you're doing now, sort of the things you're involved with. I guess you could say like kind of a little bit of your resume.
Yeah. I guess I can give an all around professionally. I love what I do. I'm a dentist. I'm a general dentist in Sterling Heights, Troy, Michigan area. I call dentistry my profession, my career, and my hobby. When you enjoy what you do, you just try to get better and better at what you do, and so it starts becoming your hobby, where you're just finding more ways to serve people and to serve them well, and to just like I said, do what you're passionate about. Um, Even though I'm a general dentist, I like to do many specialties from just opening up people's airway to helping them sleep better to correcting their posture, believe it or not, where your
Hmm.
tongue and your jaw is connected, guiding kids' jaws so they can many times bypass braces, implant surgeries, full mouth reconstruction, cosmetic cases. I pretty much do it all. I love what I do. I always believed in the story, in the saying, if all you have is a hammer and a nail, that's all you're going to use. I'm just not that person. I like to have a toolbox or sau tolbo de arrows, which is I guess I don't know what tolba is in English, but anyway. I like to do many things, and I do that in my professional life, in my personal life, and in my uh, spiritual life. But that's kind of professionally where we're at. We're just growing as a team, growing with my staff. My wife is one of my staff members as well, of my team members. So we're blessed to work together, Cody, and I have a 9-year-old son. So we're all kind of involved in what we do on a daily basis, on a weekly basis. Other than that, just personally, we're just trying to get to find that balance in work and family and church and friends. And I think that's a struggle for everybody. But I think as long as we follow the compass, which is Christ, it's easier to not get lost. And that's what I try to do on a daily basis. It happens most days, but not every day. Just really pulling out my Bible and just having some alone time. Many times after we put my son to bed, I get on my massage chair. As a dentist, your back takes a toll. So it's worth investing in a massage chair. And I just like some time to pray while I'm getting my muscles worked on. I exercise the vertical muscles. And then just pray and read my Bible and just let God speak to me. And I many times I'm surprised, even though I shouldn't be, that many questions that I have professionally, many questions that I have even in my family, there's a light bulb. Actually, this morning it was interesting. I had a case with a patient, and it was a very difficult surgery. I just done a lot of things that were risky, from just the point of enough bone to place implants and things of that nature. And I remember I got up earlier and I was just gonna do some more planning on in 3D with a CT scan and some software. And as I got up, just a light bulb hit, and it's like I felt it was God given. I had planned to just get up to pray, to read a little bit, and go to do that. And all of a sudden, I got out of bed. I got my idea and went back to bed. Because God knew I needed a little bit of sleep too. The week was a busy week coming back from a vacation. So it's interesting. I think the more we make God part of our life, the more He really sheds light on the things that and how He wants to serve others. If we make our profession and everything else we do a service to Him, it becomes an everyday service to God. So that's kind of where I am. We're just trying to really live day by day and allow opportunities to grow professionally, to grow with our friends. We have some great friends that we spend time with, and just pouring in each other's lives, having Bible study together. Even though it's over Zoom, they're in Wixom, we're in Troy, but it's just it's nice to make things priority. And then our son, just really finding ways to invest in him, having a good role model for him. I think that's my biggest challenge right now.
Yeah, very nice. So for those of you that don't know, that are kind of joining us from different places across the country, Certainly Heights is in the Detroit area. Daniel lives in the Detroit area. I actually live in the Detroit area as well. We should probably do this in person, but
The Dans,
the
yes,
dance, that's right. But Dan, I think you summarized it very well. And actually, you mentioned some very interesting things there that I want to touch upon, and we'll come back to it. Especially, you mentioned the posture thing, which sounds really interesting. And I know you're nerding out on your dental skills there, and probably a lot more than that. I've also seen you recently on Instagram. You have some commercials going on, so I want to talk about that briefly. But the other thing
sure,
I wanted to mention to your audience, on top of the fact that you're a full-time dentist and dad and husband, you've been the head of our ministry, the medical ministry and dental ministry within Charity Cup, which is sort of its own entity under sort of the Charity Cup umbrella. Dan's been faithfully leading this for many, many years, every summer faithfully with his whole entire family. And I think your team has also kind of grown into it's like kind of the medical side of things, as well as you were part of the orphanage camp early on, right? I remember you were
yeah.
leading that prior to as you're coming up. So there's a lot to unpack here. Did I miss something?
I don't want to bore people with the details, but yeah, no, I guess I missed the part where, I can say I started the mission field with just I remember one Sunday some friends of ours from church just came back from a mission trip. This was 99, I believe, and everybody was just so geeked and excited for going to this third world country, Moldova, and working with Miku Samaritian and just doing working with the orphans. And I remember seeing them. I'm like, I really want to do that. It's something for the first time we're able to go back to Romania. We just got our green card. We got the green lights to go back after 10 years. Let's see,
Yep.
99, 91, 9 years of waiting and in limbo with our paperwork for immigration. So finally, we get to go back. My brother and I remember that we were so excited to visit family. And we said, we're going to go to with charity up to Moldova. And that was my first year in 2000.
Yeah.
I remember Filubanu, he was leading the orphanage camp, and it was a great leader and a lot of things to learn. And he was prepping all the people that have never been. And so we had some great times, some great fellowship, just prepping and getting ready for the trip. And since then, for 4 years, I've been able to go back and made it a priority to go back. God has shown me many ways how he works. And, where there's a will, there's a way. Where he wants to go, he'll open up the doors. And from finances to employers to school, everything was just opened up when he wants it to be in a certain spot. But you have to make it happen. He's not going to push you. He's not going to drop it
Yeah.
on your lap. You just have to follow in faith. And
Yeah.
from there, we started dental school. I got into dental school. And then my second year of dental school is where I didn't have a chance to go back to Moldova, even though I really wanted to. But we only had 1 week off in the summer. And it was a pretty intense, rigorous program. You couldn't miss any days. So I had the opportunity to go to Honduras with the Christian Medical Dental Association.
Yep.
And that's where I went to Dr. Hambrick made some friends there. Oliver Zelaya and Dr. Hambrick and Gabi was part of Charity Cup as well. And some other people wonderful people that I met. And that's where for 3 years we did mobile clinic. And around the time I graduated, I met my wife as well. It was interesting. Our first date was actually at a mission. It was a mission conference in Ohio.
Uh-huh.
And it was unofficial. It was our unofficial first date. And that's
Unofficial
where God
because she
spoke
didn't
most.
know or you didn't know.
We both, it wasn't, I always believed marrying my best friend, and I never rushed into dating her for the sake of calling her my girlfriend. So we spoke over emails. She was in North Carolina, I was in Michigan. So it's a story in itself, and I don't want to take up the
Yep.
time, but it
No,
was
no, no.
God, definitely God driven.
Yep.
Yeah, and so
Yep.
from there, that's where it got put on
Yep.
both our hearts that
So
Moldova actually a video from Charity Cup that kind of like a promotional video. It tugged back on my heart because we're actually going to go to Honduras or somewhere in Central America, and then we saw the video and we said, you know what, God made us Romanian and gave us this language for a reason. There's already teams doing this in Central America, and we both said, we feel that we want to do this. We didn't know many other teams that was doing this in Romania or Moldova at the time, and that was our first calling to Moldova and Romania. In 2010 was our first year, and 16 years later, 15 years later, it's still on our heart, and we're still just as passionate, and we love all the teams we work with, and it's just been a blessing.
yeah, no, I think
Right.
I totally subscribe to that. By the way, you mentioned your brother, and I happened to find something that commemorate. I don't know if you remember this, but do you at all remember this? I don't know if you can
Yeah,
see.
the
Okay,
logo. Yeah, yeah,
guess who made that logo?
my brother.
Your brother. And guess what logo this is? Most people don't know
This is
this. Yep, you might know.
I'm not sure, but I know it's the earlier of the tournaments, if I
That's
remember
right.
correctly.
That is the original logo. I happened to find a cup as I was, cleaning up some stuff, and I said I'm going to bring it in. We're going to have it from now on the podcast. I'll be drinking
Oh,
out of it. But anyway,
all
Lau, your
right.
brother, made this logo. It was the first logo. We ended up changing it because we felt like it was too soccerish, even though that's kind of how we
Hmm.
started. As we evolved, obviously, as you know, we started getting involved in other things. But anyway, there's just a shout out to your brother Lau, which maybe we'll have him on sometime. But
You
Daniel,
should. He'll be more interesting than I am.
no, no, I don't. I think you have a very interesting story. So I want to. So go. You kind of covered sort of a quick timeline of how things got started and how you ended up working with Charity Cup and in the things you were involved in. But let's go back a little bit further. So you and I kind of grew up together in the same area, kind of in the same area, same church. I
Hmm.
mean, we were kind of
Hmm.
neighbors at one point in Troy there.
Yeah, yeah.
So naturally, from a friendship standpoint, we knew each other for years. But I guess I wanted to ask you, how did you come to know the Lord? I don't know the whole story, but maybe you can kind of give us a briefing of that, and maybe that gives us a little bit of insight into the
Sure.
beginning of your story.
Well, I was, I grew up in a Christian family. My parents both, went to church with us as kids in Romania. My We immigrated um, to the U.S. when I was 9 and a half in '91. My dad came a year earlier, and then we were able to come. It was interesting that in Romania, my parents were churchgoers, but I never really, maybe because I was younger, I didn't really see the depth of their faith. My mom was a dentist, my dad engineer. They had good jobs, they had good status, and maybe that's why. Maybe they were not as on fire as I knew them later on. But as we came to the U.S., I called the U.S. for immigrants God's school. It either brings you closer to Him, or it really pushes you away, because there's definitely hardships, and we had many hardships as a family, literally coming with 2 suitcases, as most of us remember, and then just starting from scratch, starting from the ground up. But I remember, throughout the challenges, I remember seeing my parents just really going to our Lord for direction, for strength, for encouragement, and that was really a living testimony of faith at work in adversity, coupled with just having great friends at church, vacation Bible schools, the Sunday school teachers pouring into our lives, the pastor, just the whole process. I remember one day thinking, eternity and hell. And I know that for nine and for a 10-year-old, a close to 11-year-old, that's that is a very big thing. You don't think too deep, but you kind of get lost in like a rabbit hole. And I just remember falling asleep and with tears in my eyes, thinking that I'm going to be in hell forever. And I was trying to picture forever, and it was just like one of those loops that just you couldn't find, you couldn't reach the end because you were at the beginning and just kept going. And with that, I just realized that I just don't want to spend eternity without God. I realized that God is the answer. He is my savior, and He did everything to give me everlasting life and to give me hope. So I think it was 10 or 11 years. I can't pinpoint exactly. Is when I decided to follow Christ, and it was early. It was an early decision. I remember I had struggles even after giving my life to Christ and getting baptized, just teenage challenges. But the one thing that I know is that the Spirit always worked in my life and matured me. A Christian life is a process. You're not mature. We'll never will be fully mature until we're in heaven. But it's a constant process where God just wants to sanctify you, to continue to make you in His image. And that I felt that. I felt that as a teenager. Many people were surprised. Wow, you're so young. You got baptized that young, and it was kind of more of a non-traditional thing that at that time our church allowed, and I'm glad they did. For me and for my brother, we both got baptized together. We made a commitment, and that commitment always stuck with me. It's like marriage, and now that I'm married, you commit to your wife. She's your world. She is your partner. She is your friend, and through thick and thin, through being tired and sleep deprived or not agreeing, you made a commitment to each other, and that is something that goes beyond just emotion. And uh, and it's something that I remember through my teenage years, and as I got into college and started deepening my faith even more. That's my story. So I was blessed to be born in a family of Christians, but it's not enough just to go to church. And I realized in my parents that was probably a lot of their life until we moved to America.
Hmm.
It was not as deep as maybe I've seen it once we moved here, and we really had to get close to each other and to God. So I thank Him for that, and I think that those moments of hardship and challenges really were able to shape my family, my parents, and my brother and I into really coming to know Him on a deeper level, to know Christ.
So, Dan, when you guys came to the States, what year was that when you guys? So you came
1991.
91. So you were what? I don't even know.
I was
Five,
nine and a
six,
half.
nine and a
I
half.
was nine
Okay.
and a half.
So you were 9.5. I know you guys started from scratch, as you mentioned. Do you remember any of that era of like most Romanians, most people that start off from scratch. Now you're obviously a dentist and a whole different story. Do you remember any of that time?
I remember it all. I remember my dad was mowing lawns and just to pay rent. I remember we rented a house in Detroit on close to Lanyo, and I remember one Saturday my brother and I were playing video games, and somebody knocked on our door, and we opened up, and it was this guy asking, "Do you have a back door?" And we're like, "Yeah," and he just jetted through our back door to run away from the cops, who knocked five
Real.
minutes later, and we opened the door and it's like, did somebody just go through your house to the because our backyard connected to another street. So they ran through our house, and at that point, when we told our parents what happened, we moved the next year. So we started with stories like that. We
Wow.
started with just from my parents really starting at very very low end jobs and low paying. At one point, my brother was in college. My mom went back to dental school to become a dentist at 49 years old. So she was in one of the most expensive dental schools in New York. She moved by herself. My dad was the only one that was working in two jobs, taking my brother and I uh, to do, at a second job, he would do some electrical work, some remodeling to just make some extra income. Because as an engineer, it's a decent income. But when you have my brother was in a private art school. My mom was in a private dental school. I was in high school at the moment, or college, early college. But there was a lot of bills, a lot of debt, and the one thing I do remember is they always found a way to have money to send us to whether any youth related thing that was church related, any conference, anything like that. I don't remember once them saying we don't have the money, you can't go.
Yeah.
Maybe other things like a video game that I wanted or a cool car, there was no money for. But things that had to do with church and with just being involved, there was always found a way. So I really appreciated that.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. So, because, the reason I asked that question is it seems to be an underlining theme in a lot of discussions I've had with people, especially the ones that are here in the US. We're realizing that the parents had a lot to do with sort of the blessings that we're able to enjoy much later on
Right.
because we all kind of came with nothing and had to start, like you said, you lived in Detroit, which wasn't exactly a great place to live, but your parents sacrificed to make it. So this is
They
part
did.
of the background that you come from.
Right.
I
Right.
guess so. I'm wondering if that had something to do with like the motive, because I know you, right? You're a very motivated guy. You don't need somebody to push you from behind. You're pretty motivated. So I'm wondering, did that have anything to do with your sort of later, the way you kind of approach things?
Right. I think it did. I mean, motivation's one thing, and I think, even though I guess I'm motivated, I mean, I try to always push myself. I try to always, I always evaluate myself. I always look at, I never want to be status quo and just be average. For the fact that I feel that God put what He invested in me for a reason, and it's not to just, you know, be average, but to really do my best. And at the end of the day, say, hey, I've given it all. But I mean, I remember, I still remember eighth grade and going into high school. I remember, man, am I going to make it? Am I going to, go? Am I going to fail high school? Each chapter of my life, I remember going to college, same thing. Am I going to make it? Oh my gosh. And dental school. But I think every step of the way, I just with that fear, even though I was motivated, there was that underlying fear that, am I good enough? And I always found my strength in knowing that, hey, if God got me here, He can get me beyond this. And I guess I could say that my success is really, really due to God being faithful to me. I can't attribute to anything that I have that's made me any better or any more motivated than anybody else. I feel that the closer I drew to God, the more I felt motivated to serve Him and to give everything that He's invested in me to do the best I can.
Okay. Now, so obviously, so it sounds like as far as your salvation, you kind of came to know the Lord, or took that step. You're what, 11? 12? What age? Did you say 11? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
I was around 11, yeah. So
Yep.
I came
Okay.
9 and a half. I was when I came to the States, and it was about 2 years later, so around 11, 12, something like that.
Mhm. Now, were you pretty involved in your church, if I remember?
I mean, at 11, I was involved with, vacation Bible schools, Sunday school. I mean, we were Sabi Serika, we were not, my parents always made it a point, even though we lived in Detroit, we always came to morning and night service. We'd sleep in the car, on the car, my brother and I, but, half-hour commutes from one way and the other, they made it a priority, and I appreciate that. I think it taught us the importance of putting it, at least a Sabbath day aside. It's not just about us and our comfort, but it's about really connecting with our brothers and sisters, with the church, and not just attending, but also getting involved. So I was involved, I think, to the best of my ability and to what I could do, but we were always there. Yeah.
Yeah. So your parents kind of instilled this in you. You want to be, you need to be involved. You need to show up. Okay, that's really cool. I remember you became part of the band, right? You were in the
Hmm.
band, right? So tell us a little bit
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
that. And at what point
So
did you get involved, and why did you get involved?
throughout the years, I've learned to play the piano, to play the violin, which I gave up and I regret. Uh, this was in Romania, was a violin, and I think that the piano was Soravica.
I didn't know you played.
Yes, yes, and so I've gone for a few years, and I still remember it as helped. With the trumpet, it was Fratele, our brother. Fratello Herdiano, he's with the Lord now, but he was always very passionate about getting more and more people in the band and teaching them. And so I'm not sure if it was my initiative or my parents, but or his, he was always very good at motivating people. And so I say, hey, why not? Let's try the trumpet. And so I was at the trumpet. My brother was at the big drums, and we both joined together. We did a lot of things together, my brother and I. And that's how
Okay.
we kind of got to join the band, and I've been in the band until pretty much dental school. So I was probably 14, maybe 15 up until I finished dental school. Yeah.
Because I remember that. I remember, speaking of Frate Herdiano, which I spoke to Daniel few days ago about this. The whole family was very involved, and I think he had a
Yeah.
passion for getting other people involved, a unique way of you got to come to band. But I assume the band
He
to you
did.
guys was more than just learning music, and I think he viewed it as a ministry more than that, right? It was
Yes. Yes.
a
Yeah.
discipline
Oh,
that
yeah.
you learned.
We 100%. It was, definitely, the music, serving the church. We would go to the different conventions and play, and he was always made anything possible. He would take us, would take instruments. He would do everything in his power to just encourage us to use our talent that God gave us for to serve others. So 100%
Yeah.
at funerals, all of the in betweens. Yeah.
Yeah, and then probably just the fact that you kind of it's a discipline to go and learn and go to practice, right? Maybe one of the
Hmm.
kids are going on I don't know when did you I think it was on Saturday, right? You guys did practice.
Saturday. Yeah. It was
So
Saturday.
other kids,
It used to be 6 to 7:30. I
yeah,
remember. Yeah.
other people would have wanted to go do something. You guys had to go to practice, whether you liked it or
Right.
not. And I think that's a discipline that it builds in you. And I remember that. And I wasn't part of the band, but I knew a lot of my friends were. So you guys, anyway, that's really cool. So that's part of your history a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm sure you made a lot of friends there. So then, Daniel, kind of what happened after that, and kind of how do we end up sort of the first sort of mission trip again? I know you mentioned it,
Yeah.
but take us there.
Yeah. Yeah, so with band and with starting dental school, I started obviously with band. During that band period is where I first went with the orphanages, and in 2000, actually one of our band, a lot of our band members, I remember Eleanor and Jenny Raetsky, and some other, I'm trying to remember who else that went the year before, and when they came in, were excited and all that. They that excitement was very contagious, and my brother and I kind of we caught on, and we're like, we want to do this. It seems like something that we'd like to be part of. It was very dear to our heart. We've done 4 years. We served together, my brother and I, and We would take kids out of the orphanages and we'd be their camp counselors, and we would feed them. I mean, they would eat meat maybe once a month, so we would buy a lot of meat for them and provide it during their lunches and dinners. We'd play games with them. I remember you would go there with so much energy and you'd just come back drained because
Yeah.
all these kids, you would have 10, 11 kids that are just holding your hand and by you, and they're just
Yeah.
sucking up all your love and energy the whole day until they go to bed.
So
And
Dan,
it
the
was,
sorry to interrupt. The first trip
yeah,
you were on, did you say it was in 2000?
yes, in 2000.
Okay. Was it at the, was it at that point at Munduk still, or where was sort of the first camp you guys went to?
So it was in Kupchin,
Kupchin. Yeah. Okay.
and
Yes, I
then
remember.
Jedinets.
That's right. Okay, so that was okay. So it was later on. Munduk was earlier on. I think I
Yes,
remember because I think I might have been on that trip with you guys. I remember Lao, Balu,
Balu.
as
That's
they
right.
called him.
That's right.
But
There's
I thought it
the
was.
big brown bear.
I just remember it was really cool that you guys, the two brothers, came along and were very vested in what was going on there. Um, and I don't know. It just I just seem to remember that whenever there was a kind of a need that arose, you guys were like very willing to help. You, your brother, because Lau, I remember, he got involved in design. He was willing to kind of use his talents to help out, and you were willing to do whatever it took, even though, um, eventually you obviously started the dentistry. So I think that's really interesting that your early start was, you could have said, "Oh, I'm going to go there and kind of look in people's mouths, or I don't know, kind of relate it to my career." But I think you just went and served the kids. I remember that.
Yeah. Well, it's really what I wanted to do even after, once God called us into, my wife and I, because at that point I took a break from Charity Cup and the orphanages because the orphanages kind of dissolved with the whole political side in Moldova.
Yeah,
So they used to put them into foster care, and so that was not available. And it was I was a little heartbroken because I really got attached to to that ministry of being able to serve the kids for that, just to really pour in their lives and tell them about what Jesus did for all of us and how much he loves them just as much as he loves us. And but when I finished dental school, I thought, there's other people that can spend time with them and do that. I felt that God gave us an extra responsibility of being able to do something that other people can't, and that's also a big need, especially in an area like Moldova, or even now where we go in Romania
yeah,
and some of the underserved villages. And it's really that's really what God called us. We felt that it was just an evolution of our servitude, where
yeah.
we can let we're really just a piece to the puzzle of leading people to Christ.
So before we jump sort of into the dentistry ministry, I want to
Mhm.
stick a little bit more because I think, like I said, you've always been like a staple of Charity Cup, like always been involved from the very beginning, whether it was anyway. So, but I remember the orphanage side of things. You were even leading that ministry with Anka a couple of
Mhm.
years. How did it feel? Like, because I think eventually initially you were like a participant, event, and then you became a leader. How did that? Do you remember any of that progression, or what was going through your mind? I guess when you kind of took on that role versus like just
Right.
being a participant.
I always believed in Proverbs where it says, when you go to the king's table, don't sit next to the king because the second in command might come in and you know tell you to move over. It's his spot. Proverbs took a lot of, there's a lot of wisdom in it. I made it my life goal not to participate with the goal of leading or of being the most important person. And actually leading is quite the opposite. Leading is being everybody's servant, and that's what Christ taught us, and that's what I try to make it my mission is really do your job and do it well, and you know everything else follows. I started as a participant, and I was passionate about what I did, and I think that passion just was a natural progression of having a role that needed to be filled. I remember Philo moved on. I think he got married and some other things along the way, and he had other responsibilities, so he wasn't able to lead anymore. And so there was a need for somebody to step up. And a lot of people at that time were recurrent volunteers, whereas for the majority of them, they were new volunteers, and it was hard to ask somebody that's never been to lead. And that's where Anka and I think we not only did we get along well, but we also served for a few years, and we knew the needs of working with orphanages, and it was a challenging. It was actually the hardest project, if I remember correctly,
Yeah.
for the most part, just because of there was a lot of just a lot of adversity with the main counselors in the orphanages that were trying to take advantage of the orphans, and the leaders that were leading. So you really had to have a little bit of tough skin and know how to handle them. And so I was blessed that I had some good co-leaders that were able to do that. I guess that's how it was. It was just really doing keeping your head down and be passionate about what you do, and not worry about uh, you know. I think many times people see leadership as an opportunity to shine, whereas, I see leadership just as an opportunity to have everybody else's back. A leader should help everybody else, push everybody else up. It's not your pedestal to get onto. We see that in the way Christ led, and we see that in the way the disciples led. And I remember even in dentistry, it was one year where we're at a main lodge was actually a remodeled orphanage, and it was in Romania. And my goodness, it was probably the worst accommodations we've ever had. We all thought we are going to a remodeled orphanage, and when we get there, it was just, I mean, the mattresses were dusty and maybe with bed bugs, and I don't know what bed bugs are, but I would assume. But I thank God protect us. But I remember the volunteers going there and coming, and they're like, wow, this is where we ended up. I remember a friend of mine, Alexandra Hololo. That was her first time, I think, and she was shocked. Just I remember, and she came with kids, and she's like, I can't have my kids sleep on this stuff. And the kids are like, Mom, we came to serve. We're not be in a hotel. Many times our kids
Yeah.
they remind us. But anyway, so long story short, we had duties. We had to the kitchen duty, bathroom duty, and I remember one of the days it
Yep.
was bathroom duty for the
Yep.
dental team, for the medical team.
Yep.
And there were
Yep.
some volunteers with us that felt that they would be better served to do what we do best, and that's medical and treat patients, not to do things, low things like clean a bathroom that other people can do that don't have the training we do. And I remember both my wife and I think I were for the most part on the same page about most things. We both said, if we are a medical team, we should teach everybody else how to truly sanitize a bathroom, because we've learned infection control, we've learned, all the in betweens. So we need to do it best.
I remember this
Uh,
story, man, and that is awesome that
and
you brought it up.
but I'll tell you, some people have not come back, or they remembered it for years after. I can't believe you made us clean
Yeah.
bathrooms. You made the doctors clean bathrooms. But
I
that's what serving is. It's leading by example, and it's not being afraid to
Yep.
do the lowest job because you're serving others.
Yeah. Dude, so that is a great story. I'm glad you brought it up. I don't even know if I would remember to bring it up, but I do remember that because some people are coming and being upset. Well, we got to do this. Dan's leading this if that's what he wants, whatever. I don't remember what the discussion was, but I remember
Yeah,
there were
yeah.
some people objecting to it. And I think that was really cool that you kind of pushed in that direction, because I think that's what it's about. But I remember when you were leading the orphanage, was it the year we was in Kupchin and you guys had to stay at the orphanage, live
Yeah.
with the kids?
Yes. 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 I want to say that was the last year, that 2004, I believe.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I
So that
remember because I went back and you guys were there, and I remember when I went, I think was Alina Banu with you guys on the team.
I believe she was that year. I know she's been with us once or twice, but I can't remember if that was a year or not. But yeah, she has served with us.
Okay, the reason I'm asking is I remember going there, and I think at that year, I don't know, we were kind of visiting some of the
Hmm.
projects, and we
Hmm.
went to you guys, and I remember when I went, it was one of the toughest years, man, because I remember we went to have lunch with you or dinner, and we're eating at these plates that are, they're not fully washed, and you're telling me, well, they don't have amenities here to wash them. We're like, and you were eating there with the kids. And I always remember being like blown away by the idea that you just adapted to that situation. I don't know if you remember that. Is that, am I interpreting that
Yeah,
right?
yes, I mean, it was, amongst, having bathrooms that didn't function and backing the bathrooms being backed up, all the people sleeping in one room, all the girls on these mattresses that were just these spring mattresses that were just, scooped as you sat on them, you just drop. We'd have to pull luggages so that they can support the mattress. Well, it was some some very hard conditions, and I have to say that I don't know why, but for the most part, I've always been in the situations where they weren't always the most easy or accommodating. But I feel that it's what made us who we are, and it's adapting and accepting that if the kids and if other people can live like that, we're there to serve them and to show them love, and sometimes you have to be able to do it in their environment, and then there's a but it was tough. It was a tough time. You're right. That
So
was the hardest, probably, out of all the orphanage years. That was the hardest year.
I remember that because I remember I was just there for, like I said, a few hours. We went to visit you guys and we happened to have dinner. And I've been to other camps before. That was not the case, but you were eating out of the plates essentially. I don't know. There was something with the dishwasher, or there was no dishwasher. There was no soap. I can't remember, but
Oh,
you guys were telling me that the conditions are very not as good as they
basic.
used to be.
Yes.
And
Yes.
yet you still sort of managed through it. And I mean, when I get there, I remember looking at you guys. I'm like, dude, these guys are like 100% used to this now. Like this is their home. It was a few days into the maybe
Right.
week or more,
Right.
and I
Right. It
remember
was
I
a
was
2 week. It was a Yeah. It was a
yeah
2 week project. So yeah, it was a long time.
I remember I was just amazed by the team and how you guys just managed to cope with the situation. And I know you and Anka were leading that. So Dan, why did you choose to stay? You could have said, guys, we're not staying here. We're leaving. I remember there weren't many choices we had that year. I can't remember. I think the kids were not allowed to leave that year.
No, they weren't. Right.
So why did
Right.
you end up still doing that? You could have said, no, I'm sorry, we can't serve here in this condition. I'm just maybe
Because we
take
love the
us.
kids. We love the kids. We loved this was the fourth year that we've been with them with the same orphanage. It was the orphanage that was the worst orphanage in Moldova. I remember when Filu was leading it the first year, they asked Miku Samaritan. That's when we kind of broke away from Miku Samaritan. They stayed in Chisinau, in the capital of Moldova, and we moved to the northern part of Moldova. And they asked, we'd like to serve an orphanage, and they said, well, they went through the list and they said, we want the worst one. And that was it, Kupchin. They were the kids, they were the most difficult, they had the worst conditions. And it's that fourth year, the last year that I was there, um, it or my last year, better yet, we normally would take them out of their orphanage and we'll bring them in a camp, and
Right.
then the conditions were somewhat better, and we at least have a little bit more say
Control,
in it,
right?
but
Yeah, right.
control. But this time we were unfortunately under the control of the camp director, which was always trying to just get more money off of us, to find ways to charge us for things. And so it was I remember one night, the people in the town where we're at, they knew that the Americans live in the orphanage, and we heard rumors that they were going to come with bats and with other things and raid us. And so as a leader, I still remember, thinking and praying and say, God, how can I protect our team? If these people are going to come and attack us, and it was a very tough. We prayed and we had some wonderful moments together as a team, but it just made us stronger. I feel it just made us to really look beyond the dirty dish or the some of the accommodations, and really look at the opportunity we had to just be a light for those kids.
The reason I brought up the dirty dish, like I said, to me, that was like a testimony how you guys were willing to go to what levels to serve those kids. I believe, like I said, at least in my scenario, that moment, what I remember, they were not able to fully wash the dish because there wasn't any soap, right? As an American coming
Mhm.
there, okay, but now I'm eating with like, after all these kids. You guys became one with the kids, is the impression that I had in my mind. That's kind of what I'm trying to say here. And I was just blown away by the sacrifice you guys are willing to make. A bunch of there were some Romanians, but I know there was a lot of Americans coming from very
Mhm.
comfortable homes, yet you're
Mhm.
willing to go and live in their shoes. Literally, eat from their plates. I don't know. I just remember, man, that blew me away, as sort of the sacrifice you guys are willing to make. And I think that had to do with the leaders being there and kind of, I don't know, setting the tone for the team.
Right. It does. It makes a big difference, when you set the tone. I think it makes a big difference also preparing your heart before you go. And that's what we used to do as a team as well, is just really how can we prepare mentally and spiritually for a battle that we're about to embark on, because there's a spiritual battle every time that you set foot in the name of Christ. And so, first of all, just us getting together beforehand and preparing mentally for adversity, and then learning. We say today that the number one rule in mission trips is flexibility. You have to be flexible. You can't go there expecting to do things your way or how you expect them. You have to just learn to adapt, learn to know that you can plan things one way and they might turn out a different way. But that's a very, very important, I think, characteristic to have, especially serving on mission trips, is just being flexible and letting God and the Spirit. I mean, I remember we're studying right now, Acts, and Paul and Barnabas. They go, and the Spirit told them not to go to Asia, told them not to go to this place. They went, they wanted to, and then they just were led to a different place. So sometimes we make plans, and God has other plans for us, and there's a reason for it. And I could say it was a God thing that we were able to adapt and to lead them to adapt as well. So it was a unity of the Spirit.
You guys are definitely forged in the fire, because that was not an easy situation. I'll tell you another thing, Dan, and this is something that I was always very proud of, sort of our team as Charity Cup, and I think some of it stems in some of those moments that you were part of, and even at the camp. But I've been on some trips where everything is so finesse, like you almost feel like you're on a travel. I'm not trying to bash any ministry, but it almost felt like I was on a travel agency arranged trip, almost like a vacation. Everything was sort of in its own place. Okay, today you go there, you do this. Everything was sort of super organized. There was no room for anything going wrong. But I also felt like I didn't really get to experience to really help those people. And I feel like what we did as a team was much deeper than that. Like, there was our desire wasn't to make it as comfortable as possible. Our desire was to serve as much as possible and wash
Right.
feet, if you would, as much as
Right.
possible. And to me, it was always amazing that people like you and some others were willing to do that. Like, to get down to that level and not just have this sort of very easy trip, like
Hmm.
sincerely, like really serve. And I think that particular trip just sticks out in my mind as
Hmm.
an amazing sacrifice that you guys made it for the Lord and for the love of those kids. So anyway, cool story. I don't want to dwell
Yeah.
anymore on it, but again, just talking to you, a lot of those memories came
Yeah.
back.
Yeah. Yeah. I almost forgot about that. Well, forgot. It's in my memory some. Yeah.
Yeah. So now I remember, yeah. So you were definitely part of leading that. So that couldn't have been, you couldn't have left there the same. It must have had a huge
No.
impact on.
No. I remember every time I would come back from a mission trip, especially the orphanages. I remember a week or two after, my brain was still processing everything and just really taking in, and just really being so thankful for what I have. I remember one of the years I wanted to buy a new car, and I was so bummed out that my parents wouldn't give me the money. Not that they had it, but at least help me get it. And I remember I got a decent car, as something that I needed for school. And that summer, I went out to the project, the orphanage project, and I remember coming back. And the first, I was commuting then to Wayne State, and I had that 30-minute drive. And I remember that first week thinking, and on that commute, I was just so thankful that I had a car. That I had a car that I can drive with, and not a bicycle, a broken bicycle that some of the orphans had that were barely riding. I remember just gratitude, and definitely I think these trips, and one of the reasons I think any Christian should make some form of oversea missions, or at least a mission trip where it takes you out of your comfort zone. It just really helps to ground you, and it helps to put you in the opportunity for God to really be able to show you Him at work in an environment where you're completely dependent on your surroundings and not on what you know and what you're comfortable with. So I think it's a great way to really grow spiritually, to mature, and to help you really see God for who He is when there's nothing familiar around you that you can grasp onto.
Yeah. So Dan, I remember the other thing I wanted to mention. Those kids were kind of became a lot more than just some kids we were serving that summer, because I think
Yeah.
a lot of the ties, like you guys kept in touch with a lot of those kids. Some of those kids eventually
Mhm.
ended up coming to the States, right? There was some friendships
Mhm.
that were tied there for quite a long time. If anything comes to mind, let us know.
Yeah, I mean, I still keep in touch on Facebook with some of the kids. I've met some of them when we went back to Moldova. My brother, I know he still has people that he keeps in contact with on Facebook. Actually, one of the girls that was on his in his group that he was a counselor for, she ended up coming to America, and she got married, and we see her multiple times a year. She's in Canada. Yeah, it's just nice to see that God provided for these kids. A lot of them have come to know Christ, became involved in churches in Moldova and
Yep.
and our churches here. So I think it's encouraging just to see that they could have been just another child that would go in the marketplace and steal just for some food, but instead God had a plan for them, and they made themselves available, and to God to really change their lives. I think it changed their trajectory. So it's really awesome to see that. It's a blessing.
I mean, I think that's what it's about, because we were not there just there to entertain them. We wanted
Right.
them their course of life to change, whether
Right.
it was, first of all, eternally, and second of all, even it just materially. Like we were trying to help them get on, maybe go to school, some of them, or at least give them advice how to do it. Eventually, there's another project that spun off of that called Timothy and
Right.
Esther, which we
Right.
did do that. But
Right.
some of those kids came from this orphanage. That was
Yes.
where it came from.
Yeah.
Some ended up coming to the States, to your points,
Yep.
got married, have a family. I know at least one of them actually had a Fulbright scholarship. Igor, if you remember,
Mhm.
came, and
Mhm.
I know he's
Mhm.
married. Mishu came to the States, unfortunately did pass
Mhm.
away in an accident. And there's many other stories like that. And so it wasn't
Yeah.
just let's have fun for these kids. It was a lot more than that. And I thank God for that. The other thing I wanted to mention, Dan, regarding the way I noticed you serving, I think during that time when we were going to the orphanage, I think, were you already in medical school, or were you pursuing to become a dentist?
I was pursuing actually medical school. That was, I call, my first love as a career. And I had a change of heart, just shadowing and volunteering for someone to get ready to go to medical school. I got accepted, and then just I decided that it's not the course I wanted to take, and prayed about it. And I said, God, if dentistry's, my mom would always kind of nudge me, but she would never push me. And I just felt that I felt I would have a more work-life balance in dentistry, and working with my hands, which I love to do, and I thank God for it. But no, I was pre-med at that time in college, and so my last year of college is where I changed my mind after I took the MCAT and the exam and got in and all that.
So the
Yeah.
reason I bring that up, because I remember there was a moment and I was thinking about this, and I said, well, Mr. Ardelean naturally would choose to go find a mission trip that serves as like what he's going to school for, like a dentistry.
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
remember I was thinking, at least in my head, that he was willing to come on this trip that was not related to that, just to serve these kids that are not related to dentistry, which honestly, that maybe that doesn't seem like a big deal to you, but I've had
Hmm.
people ask me, "Hey, can I come and do this, so I can put it on my resume?" Or and none of that was a factor for you. And I thought I always
Not once. Yeah.
So I want to tell you that, and then sort of on this podcast, that was something that went through my head, and I really said, "Hey, that is amazing." And I'm not surprised because I knew you, but I'm just saying I wanted to compliment you for that way serving in that way, because there were people who were like, well, they were like they weren't even medical school or anything, but they're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go now with a team of doctors and like shadow them because they were focused on their career, and you could
Yeah,
have done that.
right.
I don't even know if the medical team was started at that point yet, but yet you chose to do this. And I thought that is amazing and commendable. So anyway, just for what it's
No,
worth.
it's we have a lot of volunteers that we find come for the even now for the practice to have more practice, to have more exposure to their whether it's dentists or in medicine. But it's one opportunity for us to really, like with cleaning toilets, to be a witness to each other and an encouragement that, before being doctors or pre-doctors or whatever it is, or an engineer or whatever it is, we're brothers, we are Christians first. And I think that's where many times people get in they get their priorities a little bit upside down, is because we find our identity in our profession, we find our identity
Hmm.
in what we've accomplished
Hmm.
versus finding our identity in Christ. And when you have your identity in Christ, you serve no matter what profession you are. And there's nothing too small or too big. There's no person that's less important than you are, but more so, you are using what God gave you as a earthly talent to really serve the least, it says, of those is when you serve Christ. So, when we are able to find our identity in Christ, I feel that that's really when we have the correct formula of servitude and in life. I mean, how many people do we see with anxiety, with depression, with taking their lives, becoming violent because their reality just gets shattered. And the reality, unfortunately, is their identity. They have an identity crisis.
Yeah.
But when your identity is in Christ, you have a foundation, you have that rock, and that's what we try to teach all our volunteers and to really focus on. And it's cool because this year actually was a very humbling experience where I had an oral surgeon. She was a resident for oral surgery. And after one of the morning devotions that we do, I had a small devotion that I did as we all took turns. And she came after at the end and she said, last year when I was with you guys, I had an identity crisis. I was an oral surgeon. I was going for oral surgery. It's a very prestigious specialty in dentistry. They have to go through dental school. They have to go to medical school. Everybody looks at them like they're the god of dentistry.
Hmm.
And she, after serving with us, this is the second year, she tells us, I realized that my identity was not in Christ, but in what my accomplishments were. And I really appreciate that we were able to focus and reprioritize. And it was just a very humbling and it just, both from my wife and I, we just got here and it's like, this is what it's worth. It's worth it, not just to serve those that we're telling Christ about, but really the volunteers, to help them realize what it is to really be the body of Christ and really to have our identity in Christ. So.
I think that's awesome that you mentioned that, because it is about the body of Christ, and those, there's no functions, if you would. But I just wanted to highlight, and that's why I was kind of sticking to the subject of
Yeah, yeah,
orphanage, because that was what it was stuck in my mind, and I didn't know how to word it. But thank you for kind of sticking with me and sharing this. Now,
yeah.
so in my mind, that wraps that. And tell us, how did you get into the sort of the starting the ministry, the medical side of things?
Okay.
I don't know it all. I know maybe at bits and pieces, so maybe you can walk us through.
Yeah. So, well, it kind of everything was, again, an opportunity or a need, better than an opportunity, because I wasn't really looking to lead. But I just finished dental school, and God put on our heart that we wanted to go to Moldova. Well, we went actually after dental school. We got my wife and I got married as I graduated. Right after graduating that year, we took a year off just get our bearings straight, to really find what God wants with us as a family. So we went to Honduras for a year, and in Honduras is is where we learned. I wanted my wife to see what I've experienced while I was in dental school serving with the Christian Medical Association in Honduras, and so we took that model and concept, which Dr. Hambrick perfected very well, from how to serve without electricity, any of the above, and be able to have a full running dental clinic. And so we got the contacts, we got the organizations that were able to purchase equipment at a much lesser cost because it was for humanitarian aid and for serving for free. And at that time, I remember that Abi, Sriblia, and Monica, and some other people, they weren't able to serve anymore. It was they got to a different point in their life where they had to focus on their kids and some other things. And so I was asked, hey, you're a doctor, can you continue this? And Lavi as well, Dobria, and some other people, they weren't able to. So kind of everybody kind of just wasn't able that year. And so I felt a little bit challenged and not really trained or ready to serve and lead a medical and dental. Of course, dentists are not doctors, or as some people perceive that. So I had to kind of wear both roles. I had to be a leader
Yep.
for the doctors and a
Yep.
leader for the dentists.
Yep.
But I said, God, if I'm always of the mindset, if there's a need, I'm there to serve and to fill that gap. And so I said, God, if that's what you want me to do, I'll do my best, and I know you'll provide the rest. And that's kind of how it started in 2010. My wife, thank God for her. Without her, it would have been a lot harder. We worked well as a team, and so we were able to just get the equipment that we needed, and the organize everything. And then with some of the things that were already done in the previous years by the leaders of the medical at that point, we just moved things forward. And along the way came Bogdan and Alexandra Halalo, which have helped, and the volunteers. We've had some great volunteers. Some of them repeat volunteers that were just the backbones of getting things and helping others and getting things going. So that's how it kind of continued.
Yeah. So for the audience, as a context, I want to, going to do this ministry is a little bit different than some of the other projects because it involves a ton of equipment. So it's not like just organizing sort of a camp where there's toys. Now you had to bring into the country medication, and it was like another level of sort of seriousness, if you would, from
Mhm.
so that was pretty challenging. And I know you've probably had many challenges along the way every year, right?
Oh yeah,
Okay, tell us kind of what exactly do you do during that time on the medical and on the dental side?
right. Um, So, one just to piggyback on your challenges, one of the big challenges was number one, funds. We had to the first year that we served, we started a new ministry, which is a dental ministry, and then we had to continue the medical ministry, which had its own budget, and now we had to add another budget, which is the dental, and that was a big leap of faith. We just said, God, we're not gonna we're not gonna ask people, we're just gonna tell people about what God put on our heart. And it was just a testament of God's faithfulness. I remember we would just talk to people, and we would say, hey, we want to, God put on our heart to start this ministry in Moldova and Romania, and people would just start donating. And we raised $30,000 for the equipment in less than a year, which we went, of course, through TSA, through customs, through all the border crossings in Moldova, and that was a big challenge. That's a challenge every year, is to take. We leave everything in Romania, and so from Romania we cross the border to Moldova, and that's always been the biggest challenge. It's the thing I never look forward to when we go on these mission trips, because unfortunately, a lot of the customs agents, they like to be they're power happy, and they like to belittle you, and they many times want to be bribed. In this day and age, they don't do bribes that much anymore, but you almost think they still
Yeah,
want to be bribed.
yeah,
So that was always a very hard. We never bribed anybody in the 15 years that we've served. We never had to bribe anybody. We didn't believe in it, and we didn't want to bend the rules either, just to make things work. Yes, we would have gotten things faster. Yes, we would have lost less sleep, but we chose to be faithful in my mind and in my heart. And we were also I think a testimony to the customs agents. But we always crossed with everything. And so we go with a van full of equipment. We have 3 dental chairs for fillings, for cleanings. We have about 10 large cases of with hand instruments, with filling materials, with cleaning materials, with extraction instruments, with a big sterilizer. So our standard, at least for dentistry, is U.S. based, universal precautions. That means anybody that comes your way, you treat them as the most infected patient that can come through the door, whether they have hepatitis B, C, HIV, any of the things. We don't make special arrangements because we treat everybody the same and we don't cross contaminate. So we keep the clinic at a very high level, not only for our volunteers and ourselves, but also for the patients we treat, and also to be a testament of we're there to serve them with the best of our ability and the best things. We're not just doing free work because it's mid-grade work. We're doing free work that's top quality work, and so that's what happens on a yearly basis. We go with about close to 200 to 300 pounds of medication, which we
Wow.
order from an organization here that subsidizes some of it. And we have to unfortunately smuggle it into Moldova or Romania. We go with our luggages. We just are never asked what we have in them, because if they would find out, they would probably turn it back. We've tried to do it through shipping it there, and we run into issues at customs, even though we have all the paperwork showing that it's donated medication, it's used for humanitarian aid. So there's no legal way that we found yet to do medication and things that we give to people that we can't bring back. Our equipment, we find a way legally through Romania, through the Department of Transportation, where we pretty much put on a list, on a paper, everything that we take through the border. We have to come with it all back. So the only things we can't put on there are like toothpaste or medications or things that we give, because technically we would have to bring those back. And so we omit those for the only reason that there's no legal way for us to cross with them unless we pay 2 or 3 times their price.
So Dan, are you traveling from the US with all this every year, or you sort of pick it up somewhere every year?
So a lot of the things we give out that remain in to the patients, like toothbrushes, toothpastes, medications, blood glucose test strips, all those things, those we take from here. Very few do we purchase from Romania and Moldova, because it's actually more expensive to purchase there than through this nonprofit organization that helps us subsidize some of it. So we pay about 20% of the cost. Um, but the rest, the main equipment, stays there, like our dental equipment, the compressor. We have an air compressor, a big sterilizer, a 40-pound transformer, things like that. So those they cross the border from Romania to Moldova and then back to Romania.
So you're basically bringing with you a whole cabinet at the US level type of experience
Yes,
every year.
yes.
Yeah, so that is awesome. Now, okay, so you said how many crew do you normally need for running? How
So
much?
the team's about 15 people. So for dental, it's about 15 people. For medical, it's between 15 to 20 people, and that's without any local. We On top of that, we have local volunteers that help with, signing up patients, with a little bit of triage, with some order in the area, translating if it's needed from Russian to Romanian. We have counselors that are able to speak with everybody and tell them, and not only teach them how to brush and floss, but also teach them how to have a spiritual hygiene, not just oral hygiene. So they tell them about just the good news of Christ loving us, the volunteers, and loving them, and that's why He sent us to serve them. So that's what the makeup of the team is.
So we set up sort of the technical side of things. Now take us to those amazing stories that I know you've been part of because of what you're doing there. Can you give us a few stories of people, how they're impacted, and maybe even some stories of what medical intervention you had to do that was like really blew your mind, if you would.
Right. Yeah, I'll use an example on the medical. I was not part of the team, but it's one that I sticks to mind when they shared it. I believe last year, I remember one of the doctors. She met a lady that was just very against, what we were doing, just because we were not the same religion as what is the majority of people in Moldova, which is Orthodox, and we
Hmm.
were a Protestant religion, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, in Eastern Europe, there's some tension between that.
Yep.
It's almost like a competition, which it shouldn't be, and because we're all proclaiming Christ, and that's our goal. But I remember she came through and she had some high blood pressure. She finally decided to come, had high blood pressure, but there was nothing medically that would warrant her having high blood pressure. And so I remember actually one of the doctors, Alexandra, although she was sharing with us because she was the one that asked her. So she kind of took her medical badge off and said, I just wanted to ask you, is there something else in your life that is could be the cause of this blood pressure? You know, any stresses, any? And so she went on to say about her daughter, who was just recently diagnosed with cancer. And she was bedridden and couldn't even come to the clinic for the free consultations and medication because she was so depressed and she was just in pain and things like that. So she was crying and just really having a hard time with it. So we have a team that also does home visits, which visits the
Hmm.
bedridden and people that can't come to the
Yep.
clinic. And so she was added immediately to the list, and they went the next day and they visited her. They just heard her out, so to speak, prayed with her, tried to tend to her needs medically. We usually have a nurse, a doctor, we'll have a counselor, we'll have maybe somebody that might have a guitar or something just to sing something to bring some joy and some liveliness to the meeting before or after the
Yep.
meeting.
Yep.
And it's interesting that after they left, the next day, this woman calls, who was, of course, had some animosity towards what we were trying to do, and thought that we were just competing with trying to get people to from one church to another, but that was not our goal or is our goal any year. And she called and said, "I just wanted to thank you for doing what you do. For the first time since she was diagnosed with cancer, my daughter got out of bed and had hope, you know." And so to me that's what we're about. It's not just providing the medical or the dental, but it's really trying to marry our profession. Yes, we come to feed the soul or the body or the tend to the wounds, but really our goal is to tend to the heart and to really get that connection, reestablish that connection with God. And in the dental, I have an example of 2 years ago or last year. 2 years ago, there was actually a secretary in the mayor's office. He was very against what for the same reason. Just unfortunately, there was animosity between the Orthodox Church and the Protestant and the local Protestant church that we might still remember. We're trying to convert people, but really, we never invited people to one specific church. We always told people about Christ, and that was
Christ.
really our main message. And so this person who had a very hard time giving us the go ahead to the mayor and taking our case to the mayor to get the approval to serve that year. And he finally did after, my brother-in-law at that time we served in, my brother-in-law's a missionary in Satono, close to Baco, and he was the one that would take the paperwork to the mayor, but he had to go through the secretary. Well, long story short, the secretary, we finally got the approvals. We served in a school, in the local school. That's where we set up clinic for the dental in Romania. And I remember that we allowed the mayor's office to make a list of their own for people that would be needy. That's what
Mm-hmm.
we asked
Yep.
them. Find a list of needy because we wanted to
Yep.
partner. Now we don't want to
Yep.
just bring people we think. We wanted to,
Yep.
have them involved. And so they put a list. Of course, the majority of the people on their list were not needy, but were their family members or other things. They got free dental work.
So by list, just to clarify, Dan, you basically were allowing them to propose people to come to the clinic that they thought
Correct.
were needed, right? So then the
Well,
mayor's office kind of looked good, supposedly in the community now, because
correct. Because they brought this group of dentists, a dental clinic that was providing free care.
yeah,
Now, our hopes was that they would look in their community and maybe find people that we didn't know that had the needs and the need for free dental work because they couldn't afford it. Unfortunately, it was more people that could afford it that
mm,
came that were nepotism, so to speak,
right.
the situation. And amongst this person was also curious, a secretary who wanted to see what was going on. Of course, he explained to us before that, he with some European funds, they opened up their own dental clinic and medical clinic in the area, and it was very high end and whatnot. And with that, he still wanted to get a cleaning, and that's what he signed up for. So my wife was the hygienist. She's a dental hygienist, and she seated him. And unfortunately, cleanings on the mission trip last usually about 2 year, not 2 years, but 2 hours or more, because for most it's a very neglected, the very lack of prevention. Hasn't had a cleaning in a long time, so you're spending a lot more time and we want to do it right. We want to do it to the best of our ability. So after about 2 hours spending time with this gentleman, and just serving him, he was towards the end, and I think my wife even stayed through lunch to finish him up. And he got up. I remember it. He just said, "I just wanted to let you know that whatever's going on here, I've never seen in my life before." He said, "I've never seen people that serve others with such dedication, and I feel like this is it's a corner of heaven in this place." He said, "If I would imagine how that would be, it would be a place like this." He said, "Just the peace that I have and the way I was served, I have never been served in my life." And from being a person that tried to not give us approvals and to put roadblocks, to making that statement was a testament, I think, and an encouragement of just the environment that we try to create, from maybe from a culture of doctors, and then it's looking down at those that they treat as they're just patients and you're here to listen to what I have to say, to volunteers that come in the name of Christ, and serving them with love, with compassion, with any need that they have, and spending the time, even willing to go through their lunch and spend 2 hours with your hunched over and all that stuff to really give them the best cleaning of their life, or the best filling, or whatever it would be. That's really our motto. Is just to, even though we don't have the time, even though most people think that they're with their mouth open, you can talk to them all day long. We're so focused on what we do, and there's so many steps to everything that we do, especially in dentistry, but in medicine as well, that really we are just the hands of Christ. It's the counselors that are the mouth and everything else. But our motivation is that we're able to provide and really be a testament with what we do, not just our words. And it makes it worthwhile.
Yeah, I think that's an amazing story. I mean, like, I haven't been in some of these contexts. I could just see how you guys probably served them to probably move them to tears. And anyway, I also think it's very interesting that some of you guys that are going on these trips are going to some of the top schools in the world a little bit, or definitely some of the top schools in the country, and then you're going there to serve some of these people that um whatever, like, you have no need to do that. I think that's such an amazing way to use your profession to do that. You say, I don't know, I'm gonna go and serve only, I don't know, a certain level of the people, not the lowest of the lowest. And I think that's a
Mhm.
beautiful thing that Christ taught us to serve, no matter what. Dan, talk us a little bit before. I want to ask you also if you remember some cases that were really difficult and will remain with you. Walk us through what is the process, the steps that patients go through, just so the audience gets, maybe there's people that want to go on a trip with you and they want to
Right.
understand how
Right.
how does that play out.
Yeah. So just to go over the process first, normally we have a registration area, and before COVID, we used to do a first come first serve, where people would just form a big line, and first person that comes would go through the registration, and then they'd wait all day, and we'd see them, and it would be a very chaotic way of getting things done, because people would at the end of the day still be waiting, and we weren't able to see them anymore, because after 8 to 10 hours of working, we had to just take a pause, go eat dinner, and go to bed and come back the next day. After COVID, we started doing to schedule them. So we would do 4, 5, 6 people per hour. And we already had a history of how many we can see per hour, per half hour. And so what we do is we give the local church and the local organizers amount of people based on how many volunteers we have. And we tell them we can see 6 people every half hour. So they make appointments. They would spread the news, call this number if you want free dental work, and then they would call. They would schedule them like we schedule any medical appointment here in the States. And then they would show up, they would get registered by somebody, they would have their blood pressure taken, they would ask, and dental, of course, we have certain questions. In medical, they would have a much more lengthier medical history that they would go through. But our basics in dentistry would be, infectious diseases, any heart issues, any allergies, and those would be the main ones. And then we would have the blood pressure, and then they would give us the consent on the back to treat them. So we would also want to make sure that we're legally covered in case any people that have want to do us harm or bad would try to legally come and say, hey, you guys don't have, you guys did this filling or you pulled this tooth for, and we never gave consent. Um, and with that, they would come to triage, and we would have an area where one or two doctors would look in somebody's mouth and would look at what type of concerns and issues they have. They would listen to their chief complaint, and then from there, on a paper chart, we mark whether it's an extraction, whether it's a filling, whether it's a consultation only, whether it's a cleaning, and then we would kind of separate the forms, and then the people would go back and wait, usually in a tent, so they wouldn't have the sun beating on them or somewhere inside. And we would call them based on what the next available chair that's opened. Usually, the fillings take a little bit longer. Extractions, they would be faster, and so each year would have more extractions or more fillings depending on the year and the people that would come. And at the end, they would get usually a free toothbrush, toothpaste, some floss, and then they would also be able to go and talk to a counselor. So
Yeah.
they would be the ones that would just see, hey, is there anything that we want us to pray for you? Is there, they would just ask them and people would open up, and many people would have, they would be struggling with whether it's a personal matter or a health concern. And so not many people, we don't realize what a blessing it is for somebody to pray for you. And not many people have people that pray for them. So this was an opportunity for people to pray with them, to pray for them, to follow up with them maybe after we left and just see how they're doing and be able to serve them that way. So that was the dental. Medical, very similar, a registration part, a triage part where they're just finding out what their needs are, their concerns, and then they would see a doctor. And then from there, they would just do a workup, see if there's any medications that we have that we could help them with. And then from there, they would see a counselor, and that would be the process.
Yeah. I wanted to, so at the end of every, whether it's dental or medical, you
Mhm.
guys would have a counselor. And just to be clear, the counselor basically kind of figures out where they're at spiritually, right? It's sort of a
Yeah.
spiritual doctor,
Mhm.
if you would.
Yes. Yes.
And then do they pray with every patient, or it's by request, or
It's
how does
it's
that?
it's by it's by permission. The counselors there, sometimes if there's a big line, and there's counselors that are available. The people would go see the counselor first and then come back in line and go to the doctor. So depending on how the day goes, there would be people that would direct them so that there's a efficient way of everybody being seen and going through all the different stations. But usually the counselor would just ask people about their spiritual life, like tell them what our reason for being there is, which is to serve their physical needs, but at the same time to just really help them to think more about what God did for us, which is love us and give His Son for our sins. And so if people were open to pray with them, if they had specific a prayer request or need for prayer, they were open to, but they would not pray with people that did not want to pray for them. So it was always optional. We never attached any strings to any of our services, and we wanted to make sure that people know that
Yeah.
we're there for their needs only, and not to do anything more than that, not to push them in any direction.
So I think that's important to touch. The fact that we offer you a service for free does not manipulate you into forcing you to believe
Correct.
what we believe. It's a free
Right.
gift. It's offered just like the service. You make the
Right.
decision if you want it or
Right.
not. We're just
Right.
emulating what Jesus taught us, and that's the model. Very cool. Now, Dan, tell us some extreme cases that you had to treat on these trips.
The most recent one, this past summer, we had a 45-year-old, between 40 and 50. He had some mental handicaps, was with his mother, actually was their family was the original family that started the church where we went to serve and who we went to serve along with. So it started in their house. And I remember we went to visit them and give them some care packs because she was a widow. She had two children. She was taking care of
Yeah.
the handicapped one. And the sad part is that as we're leaving, I would just kind of talk and say, "Hey, why don't you bring him to the clinic so we can, if there's any dental needs?" And she said, "Well, I can't because he has epilepsy." And, it was I said, "Well, why wouldn't you still bring him?" "Well, no doctor wants to treat him because he has epilepsy, and that means he's gonna have some seizures that are triggered by various, stress points and stressors." I said, "Well, how often does he have epilepsy or seizures?" "Well, a few times a week." And I said, "And what normally happens?" "Well, he has a seizure. You have to make sure during a seizure that they don't swallow his tongue, bite their tongue, do things that they can harm themselves, and then they kind of bounce, they come to it afterwards." I said, "Well, whether I understand that it's probably hard for him to come to the clinic, but what if, we come to your house and do kind of a house call, And
Hmm.
I talked to him and I said, would you be open to maybe, because he had a lot of, he had some broken teeth, and with the people that have seizures, there's a lot of cracked teeth, broken teeth. When they have seizures, they can't control their bite, and he agreed. And so we went, and on the last day, people were tearing down all the different equipment and getting it ready to be moved. And so I went with an assistant. And at first, we were a little nervous. I mean, you're handling somebody that is fragile and that anything can throw him into a seizure. But I told the mom, whether we work him on or not, he's still gonna have a seizure. And the worst case, if we work on him and he has a seizure, then we just take care of him, protect him from getting hurting himself, and at least we've tried to help. And so that's how they agreed. 10 teeth later, we were able to take 10 of his teeth out next year. The plan is to go back and take some more out. Sadly, there are a lot of broken teeth. He's in pain usually in the winter. I asked him, which teeth hurt you? Well, none of them hurt me now, but in the winter when it gets cold, because of all the cold air and the exposed nerve and all that. And we all know that teeth pain is not fun. At least we've heard or experienced it personally. And so I was just a blessing to be able to go there and to serve him. And at the end, he's like, "So are we going to pull more teeth?" He was ready to just take care of his whole mouth, but we kind of left it at that
Yeah.
because we didn't want to over stimulate him or his body and really cause a seizure. But that was really one case where out of many others that just sticks to mind for that. Another one was last year. We met a gentleman that was an alcoholic his whole life, lost his family, his wife, due to being an alcoholic. And his sister brought him. He was finally sober, had liver cancer, and he had a transplant, all of that. And finally, he comes to the clinic, and we look. He was a little bit swollen, and I look at him, and it looked like an abscess, but something just didn't feel right. It looked a little bit more than just an abscess. So I asked, "Is there any local that can take him to get an X-ray in the city?" We were in a village, and the pastor's wife was there. She said, "I could take him." She was working from home remotely, and she was gonna take a lunch break. So she went on her lunch. She went and took him, got an X-ray, and unfortunately, it was a pretty aggressive cancer that was in his jaw. And so I spoke to the
Hmm.
sister. I
Wow.
spoke to him, and sadly, the he did not want to be helped because he felt that this was what his lifestyle has brought on, and they couldn't afford. Even though we tried to find ways to help and send him to the capital in Chisinau to see an oral surgeon and diagnose him and an oncologist. He said, the only way is if they sell their only horse, which the sister said that, and he didn't want to put the sister through it because then they would be in hardship financially. And he said, I don't want you to. And it was very heartbreaking to see a man that was pretty much condemned to death from oral cancer. And yes, part of it could have been his lifestyle, part of it could have been some of his habits, but nobody deserves that. And it was sad that he chose not to do anything because it would put his sister in more financial hardship.
Do you know what happened to him, or
I don't.
you
I
know?
don't. No, we sadly we moved to a different area, and I wasn't able to follow up.
Yeah. Dan, I think what's different and unique about the medical and dental, there's something different about. So there's people that have hardships, like they don't have money, they don't have even a house, but there's something different when somebody's in pain.
Right.
very different. And I've been at the medical project. I sort of went through the triage or assisted in some ways, and
Mhm.
I think people have a much bigger despair in a way that they come, especially if you're in pain, right? There's if you don't have a house, maybe you still have a house, but it's just not a great house, or you
Right.
you find a couch or some bridge. But if you're in pain, there's no getting away from that.
Yeah,
So I
it's
think
with
you
you
guys
24/7.
present, sorry?
It's with you 24/7.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I think you guys present a very unique hope for these people, and it's a very unique way of serving them. Whether it's dental, where you could be instantly relieved of the pain, or whether
Mhm.
it's somebody that has a pain in their body or they're gonna die, you know? I
Right.
just seen a bigger, like when I was there, I felt like people were way more desperate than when we were going in, I don't know, painting somebody's house or repairing their house. Very different approach. It's a very unique and special ministry.
It is. I feel the same because you're meeting people at their lowest point when you're in pain, when you're in desperation, when you're struggling with something for years, nobody can help you, or you're just afraid to go. Like many people in dentistry, maybe a dentist that had a bad reputation, not using anesthetic, whatever, causing more pain than helping, and so you're giving people this hope. They're seeing that you're using anesthetic, you're taking a tooth out without any pain. It's definitely a big blessing, but you're meeting these people at their lowest point, which and at their most vulnerable point, which is when they're in pain, when they have no more hope, when they have a bad diagnosis. It's a humbling environment to work in, but such a privileged way for us to be able to serve.
Yeah, I think it's amazing, and I told you every time I was there, I wanted to ask you. I remember at one point or one of the years we had also a foot washing spa that was sort of
Mhm.
part of the bigger picture of medical. Was that under your leadership? Was it after? At what point? I remember that was very impacting as well.
Mhm.
I don't know if that still goes on now or not.
Yes, we still have it. It's hard to find. We used to have some people that came year after year specifically for the foot clinic, and unfortunately, it does not happen every year. It does fall in the medical dental leadership portion and project, but we just need a volunteer to want to do that. It's a very, again, humbling a project for both parties. I know a lot of the stories from the volunteers. A lot of the ladies that have never had their feet
Pedicure.
clean.
Yeah.
They never had a pedicure. They never had somebody to wash their feet and just take their dirty schlap or their mud filled boots, and so it was very humbling and they were very embarrassed in the first place to be there, and at the same time they felt so privileged for somebody to just take and give them a pedicure to take care of them. I mean, a lot of ladies that work the fields, or they're just not used to somebody tending to their needs. They're always the mom, the wife, that's serving everybody else. So it was a very wonderful project to be part of. And like I said, not a lot of people have that calling and that desire to want to do such a challenging, demanding, and a dirty job. But it's one where you really are one on one with the person, and it gives such an opportunity for the person to really open up and just really be encouragement for them. That's really what it's about.
So, this could be an opportunity to call some people that
Yes.
would. We have some gaps to fill, but I remember when that ministry first came into the being. I believe it was an idea of Monica Stremchuk, if I remember, from Portland,
Hmm.
had this idea of
Hmm.
creating this foot spa kind of scenario. It wasn't just symbolic like what Jesus did. It was physically like they did it.
Yes.
And I believe it was right after they went to the triage of the medical and even dental, they were offered this other step, which was
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
spa. And I remember I did volunteer one or twice. I couldn't do it more than that. It was because people don't come there with their clean feet. They don't come there because they come there because they've never had the service done in their entire life.
Right.
Anyway, I won't go into details, but I just thought that was an awesome thing you guys are doing, and then symbolic at the same time. But
Yes.
I just want to emphasize,
Yes.
it wasn't just we weren't just doing like symbolically. It was
No.
heavy
It
work.
was. Yes.
when the
half
people
an
would
hour, an
leave there,
hour.
yeah,
Yes.
right, right. So it
Yeah.
wasn't just, oh, let me wash a little bit, wipe. No, it was pedicure, the whole 9 yards. And then when they would leave, I believe they were given a pair of socks sometimes if we had the budget for it, and
Right.
some house shoes, right?
Yeah.
That was really cool. So maybe there's some volunteers that are hearing this and they want to join. That was awesome. It was like the cherry on top of the cake, what you guys are
Yes.
doing.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. No, it was definitely a highlight for a lot of people that went through it that were being served.
very awesome. Okay, so then this is kind of what the medical and dental ministry is about that you're leading. Is there anything you want to add to this sort of chapter, if you would?
I think we've covered quite a lot. There's always a need for people. There's always a need for volunteers. There's always a need for hands to do the lifting. I always pray every year, God, don't send many, send the chosen. Send the people that you wanna choose to serve. And that's what I tell people. If God wants you there, it'll happen. But you have to make it a priority. And I know there's school, there's work, there's bosses, there's family commitments. But like anything in life, if you want to do something, you plan on it, you put in your schedule, and then you work towards it. And I feel it's the same thing with serving on a mission trip, whether it's dental, medical, or any other project. I don't think there's a mountain too big to move if God wants you there. You just have to trust him. You just have to put it in his lap, and you do your part. I've had so many stories of people just finding ways to come if they were faithful and they were persistent in their endeavor. I think most bosses, most people at school, when they see people that want to take off or want to do this to serve others that are less fortunate, most of them are very willing to do that.
Yeah,
So to allow
we're
that.
we're gonna have your information somewhere below in the
Mhm.
podcast episode, and we'll make sure that people can reach you if they do want to volunteer for any of the
Sure.
medical projects. I think it's an amazing way to serve, and there's never, I guess, probably enough. We could always use more people, so they're gonna reach out to
Yes.
you. So
Perfect.
Dan, kind of moving on to sort of the present day, if you would, tell us a little bit of what you're doing now and I guess how you arrived to this passion of yours that you're currently in.
A lot of people think that you have to go on a mission trip to really tell people about Christ. You have to go on a mission trip to serve. And the mission field is our place of work, is our place of school, is our families, our church, our friends. We're involved right now with just really, like I mentioned, with some friends that we're studying the Bible together. Friends that have never read the Bible once. Their knowledge of the Bible is very very limited, although they attended church. You know. A few times a year, and we just became friends. In this process, we decided to study the Bible together. So that's just a really precious time for us, weekly, where we can meet, catch up on the week, study the Word, and so that's one of our passions, is just really finding relationships and people that we can motivate each other to serve Christ more. At work, I have many of opportunities to just really pray with patients. And when they have needs, our work is a mission place. Asking permission to pray is never hurt anyone. When you tell them you want to pray for them, that's when you can get into trouble. But I find when somebody is telling you, is opening up and saying, "Hey, I have a surgery next week," or I was diagnosed with cancer, or my mom passed away, or those are wonderful times, again, to be a blessing for somebody, to pray
Yeah,
for them. We don't realize what a blessing it is to be prayed
yeah,
for. And so I take the opportunity and I just say, is it okay if I pray with you? I've learned that telling them I'll pray for you is a lie, for me, because we get so caught up and so busy with life that we just don't get a chance to do it,
forget.
at least conscientiously and diligently. So I just take the time, whether it's an exam I have to do for a patient, or I have a procedure, whatever it is. I just take the time, and I've had maybe one person that refused not to, but out of them, everybody else, I think I felt was able to be a
Yep.
blessing. And I think we're all able to find that. So that's where I'm at, is just really finding ways in my work, in my family, in our friendships, to just find ways to get to know my God better, and to with those around me, to for all of us to just encourage each other to become more Christ-like.
So in your current practice as a dentist, you are still practicing, like asking people to pray for them.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So this is not
Yes.
just on a mission trip,
No.
like in the
I
daily.
yes, I probably do it more probably in my practice on a yearly basis than I would do it on the 2 weeks that I'm on the mission trip. Again, it's just I find opportunity when people are vulnerable and they need somebody to encourage them. And I feel as a Christian and a Christian doctor, we have a such a an opportunity and a to be able to be a blessing for somebody because we're able to spirit find the need and see the need and at the same time be able to provide it because we're just linking them to the creator, to the source, to the person that can be more help than we can be. Yeah, I can do a filling, I can fix their crown, their tooth, their put a new tooth, but it will not fill that void that somebody has going through a diagnosis or going through maybe some stresses in their life with their kids or so many other things. And we forget that we're people first, not professionals. And many times we treat it's an exchange of service versus a relationship. And then that's what we've created and we are proud of and really blessed at our office is that, our patients are not just our patients, but their family, their friends. We
Yep.
nurtured our relationships and we have long-standing patients that trust what we have their best interest at heart. We're not selling them something; we're just there to serve them.
Tell us some of the services that you guys offer at your office. Like I
Mhm.
said, I actually recently seen you on you have some Instagram, I believe, whatever, I don't know what to call them, info, some reels.
Some
Yeah,
reels.
very pro, bro, very professional, very pro. I like it.
Thank you. We just recently started getting more on social media, and that's just the need of the times is just really letting people know what we're about, and it's a very social media driven society. So we just try to really promote what we do and what we're about, and serving our patients. We have a large gamut of services. Like I mentioned, we're passionate about what we do, and so we try to be lifelong learners. And not just myself, but my staff. We go to courses, to trainings together. We just went to Italy, and right after our mission trip, a week later, for just a very revolutionary treatment for helping the jaw grow in children and avoid surgery to cut their jaw and put, if they have an underbite, overbite, if children have airway problems, many are misdiagnosed with ADHD.
Hmm.
So we're, because they're not getting enough sleep at night. So they're being hyperactive, almost like a child that doesn't sleep well at night. Well,
Hmm.
the next day you can't reason with them, right?
Hmm.
Because it's like they're on a high, a sugar high,
Hmm.
because their
Yeah.
body is just they're trying to give the brain enough oxygen and enough fluid what it needs. When you're not sleeping well at night because of airway, you're hyperactive. You can't concentrate at school. Then they go to see a psychologist or some a professional, and then if the right questions aren't asked, if the right history, they end up being put on ADHD medication, labels ADHD, and that's not truly their diagnosis, at least their true cause. That's just a symptom that they're hyperactive. Attention deficit hyperactive disorder. So we're trying to really make a difference in. I'm speaking with pediatricians now. I'm working on a screening form that I can give to them and that they can use so they can easily look at some of these things. Tongue tie, for example. There are a lot of studies are showing that the tongue is connected to the hyoid bone, which is the only bone in our body that's not articulating with another bone. So the hyoid bone is behind your trachea and your jaw, and it's almost like a pendulum. So you have your tongue, and you have some muscles that are your tongue's a muscle, and then you have some muscles that are attached to your jaw, to your trachea on one end, and then on the back end you have some muscles that are attached to that bone, which are the shoulder muscles and some vertebrae muscles. Well, if your tongue is your tongue tied and or partially tongue tied, and it's pulling that pendulum, that bone forward, well, guess what happens to some of your shoulder muscles? Some of your, you have scoliosis, more higher chance of scoliosis, higher chances of having a curved a cervical spine, you have uneven shoulders, and so these are things that we look at. So our office is not just about a filling, just about a root canal, just about a crown. We're looking at the patient as a whole, and it's a very holistic approach to our patients. Many times they're like, I didn't know, I've never had this done, ever done before. Nobody ever measured this. I didn't know that. Nobody talked about my posture at a dental office. I didn't think that I would get all this information at the dentist. So what we really are take pride in is the fact that we look at all these things. It's almost like a quarterback for your mouth, but also things that your mouth can affect other areas. For example, when you have TMJ jaw issues, it can lead to having hip problems, knee problems, and then vice versa. Having a knee accident can lead to your jaw being thrown off, and now you're clicking and popping, you have pain, you're clenching, you're grinding. So a lot of these things, sadly, in our profession, they're just treated as, we just treat the symptom, like in the medical world. You get a Tylenol or Motrin for your headache, but we don't look beyond why do you
Yes.
have the headache. You didn't eat, you didn't drink enough water, you're dehydrated, barometric pressure. There's so many different things, but instead we just pop a pill. In our profession, we just give a bite guard for everybody that grinds and has jaw issues, but the bite guard doesn't help solve it.
Yeah.
It just helps you from, what happens when you don't wear the bite guard at night? You still have those problems. So we're looking beyond that. Then with that, you need training, you need to have the right set of eyes. And, like they say, once you learn something, you can't unlearn it. And I had the privilege and the blessing to learn under one of the best guys in dentistry in Seattle, and it's somewhere that I recommend to everybody, my and all my colleagues. That just is a general. It just changes the way you do dentistry because you look at every cause of the problem, not just the symptom, and so you're able to, somebody that has broken up teeth, it doesn't phase you. Okay, let's look and see what everything's a story. You're a detective. And then once you get to the bottom of the root of the cause, then you're able to help fix it. You're not just putting a band-aid on it. And that's really but it takes a lot of continuing education, thousands and thousands of dollars of seminars and training and time taken away from the office for that. But we enjoy doing it. Like I said, I love to be a lifelong learner, and I love to have that extra tool in my toolbox so that I hate not knowing, and that's just me as a personality.
Yep.
Yeah. So, like I said, braces, we do braces, traditional and clear braces. We do that functional orthodontics, which is guiding the jaw, helping the airway. We do tongue ties, release tongue ties, which are linked to all of that as well. If somebody has all broken up teeth or failing teeth, we can help them have a new start, a new smile. So we take all the teeth out, place implants, and a fixed bridge or all on X. There's many terms for the same thing to give them an immediate smile, a functional that they can chew and eat with. Veneers, a lot of cosmetic cases. We enjoy changing people's perspective and smiles and just giving them a more self-confidence. I mean, examples of people that just never smiled in photos or, coming to the office all of a sudden, now they're smiling all the time. They're just happier. So it's nice to be able to be part of that change. And that's what gives us really joy in what we do every day. It's not easy. It's a lot of, all the, you're kind of the tu dai ordine, tu execuți, type of scenario where you're the one that's prescribing the solution, and you have to also give them the solution,
Yeah.
not just so it's challenging, and but it's what makes every day interesting. It's never dull day at the office. So we have a great team. We have fun. We joke around. We try to find the positives in everything, and that's what makes the day go faster, and it gives us a good experience.
Yeah, no, I could tell that you're very passionate about it, and it shows. Obviously, you've chosen to also serve in that way, not just work. But that's really cool. There's a lot of things I had no idea about, like you mentioned, even HDAD, right? I have two kids now that are little. That's always a concern, right? There's all kinds of. You listen to a lot more stuff my wife does, maybe not me, but
Hmm.
that's interesting that you're saying even a dental issue could cause them to have HDAD because it really instigates these other things. So that is very interesting.
There's a lot of links. I mean, I we can spend 2 hours just on that, but yeah, there's a lot of links, and, you know, people see their dentist many times more often than their pediatrician or their family physician or the primary care physician. So we take it seriously to also be able to be that quarterback where, you know, if we spot or see things, we can plug them into the right, hey, you should, when was the last time you had a physical or had your blood pressure? Because there's all these signs that are telling us, or sleep apnea, you know, sleep
Yeah.
apnea, high blood pressure. So many, 40% of people over 40 have sleep apnea, you know, and sleep apnea leads to high blood pressure, leads to daytime sleepiness, leads to, you know, Alzheimer's, increased risk of Alzheimer's. So many things that are linked to the oral cavity and just the mouth. So it's our job. I mean, it's our responsibility, and I feel that, and that's part of the reason that motivates me to learn more, to know more, because I feel I'm responsible for my patient, you know, and the more I know, the more I
Yeah.
have, and I'm up to speed, the more I can serve them better, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it kind of ties into the ministry aspect. This is definitely, I mean, it sounds to me like there's a saying, you know, if you never want to work another day in your life, then do what you love, right? And it seems like you've kind of hit that nail. That's what you're
Yeah.
doing. So that's awesome. Dan, if you were to, so the way we kind of progressed a little bit throughout your life here, you have an awesome family. You're serving in your capacity. I feel like you are embodying this person who's making their life count by investing in God and people. So if you had some advice for somebody that's younger looking at this, what advice would you have? They're just starting out. What advice would you have for them to make their life count as they're looking forward?
Right. Um, Stop looking and just do. You know, I mean, many times we wait for the perfect opportunity, or we wait for, you know, thunder to strike and just, you know, hear that God's voice in it. I feel God calls every Christian to serve, whether, and like I mentioned, you know, and he calls you to serve where you are. Whether you're at school, whether you're a professional working, you're a stay-at-home mom. I mean, we all have a responsibility to our kids, to our neighbors, to our friends, to our coworkers, to be that living testimony. And I have a great book that I would recommend. It's called "Giving Away Your Faith." And it's by Paul Little, I believe. A phenomenal book. It's very practical, and it touches on many of the ways that we can practically give away our faith to people in a way that you're not uh, shoving it down their throat. You're not forcing anybody, but you're just creating relationships and allowing a natural approach to really get to know God together. Um, so I would say just the first thing you have to do is just sit down and be ready to do what God tells you. If you're not ready to serve, meaning what does that mean? Just ask God, what do you want me to do today? And I think we just have to many times put God to the test, but we have to be ready. You have to be open. If you don't have your eyes open, you can't see what's in front of you. So the first thing is just to ask God, open my spiritual eyes so I can see what you want me to do today. And I think that should be the first step. And then the to go along with that is you can't serve others if you yourself cannot do not get your own um spiritual food. We can't be servants if we don't know what Christ looked like, because the servant that we're modeling is Christ. So just rooting yourself and just having a daily, to the best of your ability, discipline of opening the Bible, a few minutes a day. Half an hour for the strong, an hour for the strong or the willing or that can, but just having a discipline of daily devotions of reading the Bible, not another book, not a commentary, but just the Bible and letting God speak to you, and then just 5-10 minutes of just your thoughts and your prayers at the throne of God, just in your head, just letting God speak to you based on what was read. I think that's very important and very helpful to get you in the right mindset
Yeah.
for the next day. Whether you do it at night, I'm not a morning person. I'm So for me, at night is better, but you have to not wait until you're that tired to do it because it's just you're gonna fall.
Yeah.
That's I think the first step is getting grounded in the word, and asking God, how can I serve you today? Because we're all asked to do that. It's every Christian's calling.
Yeah. Yeah. Very nice. Very nice. Thank you so much.
And to amplify that, go on a mission trip. It's a great place for God to really speak to you more personally
Yep.
because you're just out of your comfort zone. Our comfort zone many times just blocks a lot of that. So that's another recommendation.
Absolutely, absolutely. I totally recommend that as well, especially if you're looking to find your spouse. I've been telling some younger people, where better place to go than on a mission trip to find your spouse. There's so many aspects of that. First of all, you see how they serve, you see when they're tired, you see in many, many different scenarios. And anyway, highly recommend it. We could go, we can
Right.
talk a whole lot about that.
Yes. Yes.
Dan, what are some of the needs that if people are listening, they could maybe help with
Mhm.
related to the ministry or otherwise?
Needs are always, volunteers. So, if you're in the profession, even if you're not and you want to serve, and we will find something. But, if you're in the profession and you want to come and help us, there's always a need for dental hygienists, for dentists, dental students to help as assistants in medical and the general medicine, for doctors, MDs, it's different specialties, nurses, for foot clinic, the foot spa, there's a need for pharmacists. And of course, like anything, we have budgets, big budgets that we have to meet and try to raise every year. So if
Yep.
God puts it in your heart to help, I can tell you that 100% of it goes to that. All the volunteers from Charity Cup and pay their own plane tickets to go there, their own, so everything is self-funded,
Yep.
and all the proceeds go towards the helping the projects, paying for the supplies, and using that money on the mission field. So if God puts it on your heart, it would be a blessing for not only for us to see that God has put on other people's hearts, but also for the people that we're serving.
Yeah. Thank you for touching on that. I hope people that are listening, if God puts it on their heart to help this ministry through funds or by going or even a
Right
word
here.
of encouragement. But contrary to maybe what other people think, when we go, not only do we go on our own dime, we also bring stuff with us that we pay for. Now, we try to fundraise as much as we can, but there's a lot of times, a lot of people think, well, you're fundraising for your ticket. Not really. Our volunteers are paying for their ticket. If we fundraise, it's usually for the equipment or for other people that cannot afford to pay. FYI, just
Right.
wanted to bring that up. So there's always a need to always use any donations. Like I said, it's always going to go for in the most efficient way. It's going to be used. That's always been our motto, our goal. So.
Yeah.
Dan, anything else you want to add as we kind of land this plane related to the Mr. Ardelean, Daniel Ardelean, and just the ministry that you're involved in with the medical and dental, and yeah.
I think we covered everything. I just wanted to thank you for taking the time to just raise more awareness to the mission, to different projects, to really encourage others to make their life count and start by just drawing closer to God and making themselves available to serve.
Amen. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this discussion. It's been great to really catch up and kind of reminisce a little bit through
Yeah,
the years here since we had a chance to serve together many occasions. So thank you so much, Daniel, for taking your time and for I hope a lot of people will be inspired through the story, and I hope we'll get a few people that might want to come and serve with you.
I'd love
So
to.
that'd be really awesome. So Dan, just one more thing that we made a tradition here, sort of through this podcast. I have a set of words here, and I just want to get
Okay,
your perspective on this word. So the kind of the first thing that comes to mind within like 5 seconds. So I'm just gonna run through them. Let us know what you think.
politics. Huh. You can't change it, so don't lose sleep over it.
All right, all right,
Economy. Um, there's always going to be an up and there's always going to be a down.
okay,
Wealth. Best one is the one that you accumulate in heaven.
Amen.
Truth. There is an absolute truth, eternity. Best place to be. Looking forward to it.
All right. Here's another.
Dating. Be friends before you date.
Hmm. You heard it here. All right. That's right.
Love. Love. It comes in many forms.
Hmm. Nice.
Marriage. Best things sliced bread.
Hmm. Okay. Awesome.
Purpose. If you don't have it in your life, you're walking without a compass. Church. Um, get involved. Don't be a spectator.
Awesome.
Family. A great way for God to teach about Him through family.
All right.
Jesus. The best teacher and the best person to follow.
Amen. All right. Thank you so much. I hope to see you on the next podcast and see you next time. Until then, make your life count. God bless. See you next time.